right, welcome guys, welcome back, welcome to our studio. It is now Friday.
Woo, Friday.
Yeah, woo. But it's been a day already. We've had some developments with the coronavirus in Alabama already, and information that I'm going to share with you. But before I do that, I want to introduce you to our guest. This is my love of my life, Thomas Teasley.
Hello.
Also aerospace engineer in Huntsville, Alabama. So he's going to be here sharing with us all the impacts of this virus on your industry and just in general, because a lot of the companies that are involved in aerospace are on the Arsenal. Can you kind of explain like what the Arsenal is and why NASA operates on the Arsenal? I don't really know why.
Yeah, so George C. Marshall Space Flight Center is on Redstone Arsenal. Redstone Arsenal is run by the U.S. Army, I believe. So we have a small little section of Redstone carved out for the Space Flight Center, and then we have two test areas, the east and west test area that I go to. I go to mainly the east test area to do some of my work, and that's where we actually test up to 10K pound force thrust engines, and then the other test stand can go up to 65K. But yeah, in general, that's Redstone Arsenal and Marshall, and a lot of the companies that I deal with are actually outside of the Arsenal in the Huntsville area.
So a lot of it maybe you can still do, but I don't know. We'll get into that later. Before we get into that, I wanted to just touch on some of the things that Kay Ivey, our governor, closed down this morning. So starting at 5 p.m. today, there's going to be a few things that you're not going to be able to go do. Obviously, you can still go to the grocery store, the hospital, of course, but even the hospital is kind of starting to close in on what employees they're going to be bringing in and classifying as essential. I actually overheard today a lot of the nurses and doctors are getting letters now, classifying them as essential workers in the case that, it starts to get narrowed down even more in terms of who can be, on the road. But we're not there yet. So just generally, they shut down entertainment venues like nightclubs, concert venues, theaters, casinos. I don't think we have any of those in Alabama anyway, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty
actually.
sure the lottery is illegal here. But athletic facilities like fitness centers, spas, yoga places, any activity that requires shared sporting equipment. So I don't know, I guess like public volleyball places. Oh, maybe tennis court.
Orange Theory. I know people go to Orange Theory a lot.
Were they still allowed to go? Because I know
I don't think so.
Planet Fitness, the gym that I go to, was closed down. How long was that? Like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's a couple weeks.
Yeah, so I've had to start bringing my workout clothes to work so I can just like go on a jog during my lunch break. But it's definitely, I did that yesterday and I've been so sore today. Like, I think I did one set of sit-ups, and I used to do like over 100. So I don't understand. 2 weeks of not working out.
Detraining is real. It's a problem.
Yeah. Have you, I know that's something that you've been trying to keep up with. Is that how have you combated not being able to go to the gym?
Yeah. So I've looked into, I don't want to dive into this in detail, but a lot of the literature that I've looked at says that you start losing muscle mass after, I think, 3 weeks. So it's a good while if you're not working out at all. But if you want to maintain, it's a lot easier just to do a couple of sets of small weight dumbbells or push-ups, or just go on a run every now and then. And then after a couple of weeks, if not months of just doing that, you'll maintain well for until you get back into your normal rhythm.
Yeah, I hope that's not too long. But I'm glad we bought those dumbbells years ago. And we never really used them, but now that
I've been using them every day.
Yeah, now we're using them every day, so I'm kind of glad that we have those. Yeah. But other places, close contact service providers, so that's like a barbershop, hair salon, any waxing salons, nail salons, tanning salons, and then massage therapy establishments or massage services. So I'm a little unclear right now if that affects physical therapists, because I feel like physical therapy and massage therapy, both respectable careers, but they're very different. So I don't know if they're going to be classified as the same, like if they can just stay open or not. But retail stores, so that would be furniture stores, clothing stores, department stores. So Target, I wonder if that's Target's affected. I know one of our close friends works there, so I wonder if that's going to be
grocery stores aren't on that list.
No,
I guess they couldn't be.
It says
people need to get groceries.
no. It just says retail stores.
Okay.
So maybe
they might minimize their staff in those departments.
Yeah, I don't know. And they talked about beaches being closed, and they also talked about it was dentists. I can't read that far away. Dentists, and I'm trying to see what other ones besides dentists. And obviously schools are now going to be, only online until the end of the year. So that I know I have a lot of teacher friends, and I know they're very sad about that, just because they won't ever see their kids again.
Yeah.
Well, not ever again, but they'll see them virtually, and then maybe next year if they graduate to the next level. If they're not like graduating.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's been crazy, and I feel like it's really gonna change how just our local community looks like, because I don't know.
For sure.
Do you feel like we're gonna see just as many people on the road, or do you think maybe that'll?
No, I mean, I think if gas prices reflect anything, they've gone down 30, 40 cents in the last couple of weeks alone. And so that's a direct reflection of supply and demand. And so if there's not that many people on the road, I know I don't know how many employees go to Redstone Arsenal, but thousands, let's just say. There's thousands of people that are working from home that will not be on the road, which I saw an article online about how NASA scientists are taking pictures of the Earth and seeing that carbon pollution and other atmospheric pollution has actually decreased substantially in the last 2 weeks, I thought that was a very interesting read.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're working from home, and so gas prices are going down, which means there's fewer people on the road. And also, whenever I go out just to get groceries, I have not seen a traffic jam anywhere, even at 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, usually I end up like behind a tractor just because of where Athens is. So a lot of the traffic jams are construction, or if I'm behind some sort of slow-moving farm equipment. Yeah. But before I get too far, you were talking about satellite imagery. I know we have a friend that does a lot of satellite imagery. How are people still doing satellite imagery if they're at home? Like, do they have access to the cameras from where they live, or how does that work?
So our particular friend, I won't mention his name, but he, I believe he's either in a state that has not required them to work from home yet, or he is actually labeled as a essential personnel, and so he has to report to work in order to do that.
Yeah, I wonder, like, how are they going back to the carbon thing? Were they measuring it just based on like pollution, the way it looks, or are they able to?
I'm not sure about the science. They might have been using some sort of spectroscopy, looking down through the atmosphere, because a lot of the Earth geospatial orbit satellites, I forget what they call them exactly, they have mass spectrometry, and so they can look at atmospheric composition. So I'm betting they were actually looking at.
That's super cool. So they can almost like sample the atmosphere
based off of the wavelengths that are emitted or reflected or absorbed from the atmosphere.
So they're just collecting data. They're not actually like taking a
capsule
of
air. So they're taking a picture, but it's a special kind of picture to where they can pick up the amount of photons that have been emitted and then absorbed by the actual sensor. And so when they get those data back from the imagery, they can run a series of analyses on it and say, there's this much, this high of an amplitude of this specific frequency, which correlates to CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. So that's one possible way they could have done it. I don't know if that's what was actually in the article, though.
Okay, that's really cool, though. So when we talk about like essential workers versus non-essential workers, is that something that NASA is implementing right now, or do you know, like, is everybody considered kind of essential still?
So I think everyone at NASA is essential, but
I'm
in the
saying
way
them, like
I
not
know, I
you
know.
personally.
The way that that NASA leadership and the director of NASA, Jim Bridenstine, who I think is doing an incredible job right now with protecting workers at NASA, the way they define essential personnel is people who have to do mission critical tasks and have to be there. And so if they just minimize the workforce substantially, that's much fewer instances of contact or cases of potential spreading, and even that has changed. So there were different levels of I'm going to call them levels of awareness. I forget the exact name, but NASA facilities went to level 2 a few weeks back, which was basically a beware, if you can telework, then you should be teleworking. And then NASA Ames found a case, someone there had a case, and so they went to level 3, which means all non-essential personnel goes to teleworking. And then Marshall followed suit a week after, I suppose, because someone at Marshall tested positive as well. And then we went to level 3, and then I think several are going to level 4, which is, I believe, no personnel. It's shut down at that point.
But they can still work.
Teleworks.
Everybody. They can still work from home though.
Yeah. As far as I understand.
Yeah. How does that limit? I know NASA is not always like blowing stuff up like it looks like in Hidden Figures, but
you'd be surprised.
Yeah, I know.
Not blowing up, but causing fire.
Yeah, testing. Yeah. So what does that look like for someone who normally does that, and then they have to work from home? Obviously, they can't start blowing stuff up in their backyard.
Yeah, so I think I can speak to that just based off of a lot of the work that I do personally. So I do a lot of work with component development and then hot fire testing with those components. And what hot fire testing is, we put it on a stand and then we put propellants through it and light it, basically. So we make fire and brimstone with it, but that's an important step in determining if the operating conditions of a combustor are safe and can eventually be used as a feasible means of propulsion for spacecraft. But I digress. So where was I going with that?
So now that you're home, you're not doing hot fire tests in our backyard, hopefully.
No.
While I'm at work.
I would love to. I think that would be neat. So a lot of my job particularly involves hands-on work with components, going to manufacturers, going to vendors, physically interacting with these people. But the other 30 to 50% of my work is actually writing up reports, putting out preliminary test requests, actually doing the physical calculations of flow rates, pressures, all the initial conditions required to have a successful and safe test. And so a bulk of what I'm doing right now is, with a lot of my colleagues, we're actually writing a book on manufacturing processes now to publish. And so I've been putting a lot of time and effort into that. And then I'm a part of several different projects that require those calculations to be done beforehand. And I hadn't had a chance because of all my work with components. And so now I have that chance to actually get those written and done. And then I have a number of reports that have been backlogged, and so I've gotten a lot of those done.
It's just so exciting to get an inside look, because usually you think of these like really cool jobs, like working for NASA, being a rocket scientist, or like working for the FBI, or working, as a detective. And it turns out to be a lot more paperwork than you would expect. It's a lot. And then a lot of it, I don't know, gets put aside because you have all these fast-moving projects.
Well, it all has to happen eventually, so whether it's prioritized or not, it will get done.
Yeah, no, it's just like cool to see how it's really regular people doing these awesome jobs that you don't have to be, I don't know, this like...
No, you really
Ken
don't.
doll.
Actually, when I was growing up, and I don't mind sharing this with everyone, I was in special education courses, and so... learning was just very difficult for me. And so I remember at one point I was hard pressed to even figure out how to even do long division. I couldn't do long division at one point. I just didn't get it. And then over time, I just started getting more resolve and the desire to understand things. And at a certain point, I just caught up to my peers and started to excel. So it's really just amount of how badly do you want it, how badly or how interested are you in the subject, and then what are you willing to do in order to achieve your goals.
Right. And division has changed. The way that we teach division has changed a lot. So hopefully, I hope you realize it's not necessarily a reflection on you at all. And maybe the way that we teach it has changed a lot too, just to make it more like people understand it a lot better now, the way that we teach it. But it's just so cool to see how, to see your story. And I think your story is so inspiring, just to know that coming from where you came from to where you ended up. And it kind of can give people hope, like just because you're in XYZ situation doesn't mean that you can't achieve like a crazy or awesome dream of yours. That's really cool. Yeah. So did you want to tell us at all anything else about how this virus is affecting NASA? Any last words before we move on?
Yeah. So I know our leadership is very focused on making sure that we are safe and that we are not exposed to it. But at the same time, we are getting the resources that we need in order to do as much of our work as possible, which I'm really grateful for all of that.
Right.
And so they're doing an incredible job with that. But the biggest thing is just the unknown. We don't know how long we're going to be at home doing this. I can't complain. I'm actually getting more work done than I ever would have.
Just so you can focus.
Just because I can focus on it and get all these papers done and all these reports done at the same time. So in terms of setbacks, I think it's really just in some cases it's not really. I don't know if I would even qualify it as a setback, just because this other work would have had to have gotten done eventually. Right. And so I'm doing it now, but at the same time, we were able to ship out a lot of our components to have other companies process them in the meantime. And so we would have been waiting on those anyways. But that's just speaking for myself and my work and maybe some of my colleagues' work. I can't speak to the majority of other NASA branches. So.
Well, hopefully, and I think maybe because it's a government agency, hopefully it's a little bit more insulated than something that's more profit-based. Do you feel like, because the budget hopefully is already set for you guys for 2020, do you feel like if this were to extend past 2020, would that change the situation at all, you think, if we were still teleworking in, I guess, December?
Maybe, but I really can't speak to that at this point.
And hopefully
it's just too far forward looking, and I think all this will be resolved well before then anyways.
Let's hope so.
But I can say for some of our vendors, they have heeded the advice of the state and local governments and then the federal government, and they are doing the best they can to reduce risk of exposure and spread, and so they've gone to minimum workforce as well. So
something that we're worried about as a company is so funny. We sent someone all the way to Atlanta today to pick something up because we're worried about the Postal Service, because now those people are getting infected, and a lot of them there's a reduced workforce, and so I don't know if there's potential for us to stop being able to be shipped items, and I don't know how that would affect the economy in the long term if you can no longer ship stuff. What do you think?
There could be some that does have the potential to happen, in my opinion. I'm not an expert on the subject, but I do think that it could happen.
We love to speculate.
Yeah.
Me and Thomas on the couch.
I think the biggest thing is not to be afraid of what's going to come in terms of the economy, at least. I mean, if you have a home, if you have bills, work with those collectors, work with your state government, and I'm sure that they'll be able to come up with some plan for you, especially in light of the circumstances that our country is going through. So.
And we're going to keep y'all updated on all of the incoming news, and hopefully we will get those stimulus checks just to help people get by, and hopefully that will help us ease back into normalcy, whatever that's supposed to look like. Yeah. But I was hoping you could tell us, guide us a little bit through. I know people in our age group usually don't play with stocks, and when we first started talking about it, it was kind of scary because, it's kind of like this invisible money, almost like Bitcoin. And we kind of started diving into it recently. How can somebody like us who had no prior experience, what are the first steps into getting stocks or buying stocks?
Using the internet and YouTube. You can find anything on there nowadays, but I think I started out, my parents recommended using an app called TD Ameritrade. I'm not advocating for them specifically. I'm sure there are other apps. It's just the first thing I came across. I would just set up an account, and it's literally as easy as on your phone, just going to whatever the stock you want to get. You purchase X amount of it, and then you let it sit, and you either watch it depreciate or you watch it grow. Yeah.
So, but it's not just an app, though. You can also go online.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah,
I never looked into it much further than that.
But there is an app. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right. Well, it was great to have you on the show today, and I'm really thankful that you could share with us just all the impacts that this might be having on the aerospace industry, because, we still, I don't know, still talking about sending someone to the moon.
Oh, we're doing it. Soon. It's going to happen. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the progress we can make on that when we're all working from home. And I don't know. I feel like it also has a lot of potential for the way that we structure work, like the workforce.
Yes.
And so, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. So Artemis and SLS are very, very exciting missions coming up. They're going to happen. I've worked on some aspects of it, and it's inspiring to really see. Yeah, we put people on the moon back in the 70s, in the early 70s, and before the 60s closed out.
Right.
And it's inspiring to see. Finally, we're going to be going back, and so that's one thing I'm very excited to see. And it's a technological achievement that's going to eventually lead to going to Mars and even further beyond.
What year were we talking about doing that?
Right now?
Yeah, what year had they proposed?
Oh, in the next 3, maybe 4 years. Huh. I think Green Run is slated. If it didn't already happen, it'll be in the next few months, and then they're going to do a first launch before sometime in 2021, in the next year or two.
Okay, you know where my brain's going? What's that show that we watch where they sent a whole group of people up into space when there was an epidemic? Oh, what is that? It has the blonde girl.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, what is that
not
called?
Tracking with you.
Well, they sent a huge group of people up into space, and they lived kind of on a space station, and then
Is it a family? Lost in space?
No.
Okay.
And they sent them down onto this new planet, and they were trying to survive on this new planet, and there was wars and whatnot. But
okay, keep going. I'm interested now.
How do you think NASA would decide if they were to send 100 people to the moon? Do you think it would be just like how they're sending them to Mars? If you want to survive this epidemic, you have to get a seat on the space station.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like
most of my work is in propulsion.
It was similar to when we were sending people to Mars, the same concept. But if we were to discover a new Earth, I don't know.
Yeah, so if you were to discover a new Earth, it's likely going to be in another solar system. And so right now with our conventional chemical rockets, the amount of time it would take to get to another solar system, let's say the closest solar system, Alpha Centauri, I think it is, it's 4 light years or something like that away. 4 light years at the maximum traveling speed of, let's say we got a couple of planetary gravitational boosts out of it before exiting our solar system. That's still decades of, if not centuries of interstellar travel until you get there. And so you'd have to either put people on ice if we can figure out how to do that. Hypersleep, I guess. But this, now we're getting into the realm of science fiction.
I'm Bellamy is the one of the main characters.
Oh.
What is that show called?
The 100.
The 100. Yeah. Okay, that's something.
Yes.
Exact same concept. I was on the right track.
That's the same Earth. It's just far into the future.
Right, but they were kind of insulated up in space, and then they came back.
Yep. Pretty
much.
much.
I don't know. I feel like that's just where my brain goes, but hopefully that would never happen.
It's a good show.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you hopefully on Monday or Tuesday with all of your Corona and Athens news. Thanks so much.